welcome to Crescent Research Center interview series. I'm your host, Murat Ahmazov, Deputy Director here at Crescent. And today we are honored to be joined by Dr. Joseph Siegle, a distinguished scholar and a proud alumnus of the University of Maryland's School of Public Policy. And Dr. Siegle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we are here today to discuss the devastating Sudan conflict, a civil war that threatens to reshape the Horn of Africa. And let's dive right in with our first question, and it's about drivers and dynamics of the conflict. Dr. Siegle, let's start at the beginning. Who are the primary fighting sides in Sudan, and how did the conflict initially start? And more critically, is the war primarily a power struggle within Sudan's political and military elite, or is it fundamentally a proxy war controlled by foreign actors?
All right. Well, the two main protagonists in the conflict are the head of the army, the Sudan Armed Forces, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the head of the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemedti. And the two had been allies during the transition from the 30-year rule of Omar al-Bashir that ended after popular uprisings in 2019. And the two military actors were part of a transition government with the civilian leaders of the opposition, who were supposed to be part of a 3-year transition to a fully fledged democratic civilian government. And so the main actors in the war are the two military leaders who, rather than proceed with the transition, conducted a coup in October of 2021, 2 years after the transition began. And then, because of rivalries between them, erupted into a conflict in April of 2023. And each are vying to be the head of state in Sudan. And I think it's important to keep in mind that, yes, these are the main protagonists. The origins of the conflict date back to the 30-year rule of Omar al-Bashir, which was very repressive, highly corrupt. The economy shrank. People were suffering streets, and it led to the demand to get the military out of government. People wanted a civilian government. And so the fighting we're seeing today is really a continuation of the military's expectation that they should continue to rule, and the question of which one of them is going to be the leader. And it's been very devastating for the citizenry, and just shows the real contempt that these military leaders have for civilians. Now, while the two military figures are the key drivers of the conflict today, they are being supported by outside actors. In particular, the UAE has been the biggest supporter for the Rapid Support Forces of General Hemedti. And over time, General Burhan has received reports from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar. And so there is a proxy element of the conflict that has now evolved. And each of these regional actors have their own interest that they're trying to carve out in Sudan. So that's adding another layer of complexity and power to the conflict, because of the resources, the material, political support that these military figures are receiving.
Yeah, thank you for describing the start or the core of the conflict. And let's dive to the second question, which is about regional implications. The conflict's fallout is already being felt across the borders, as you know. And what are the implications for Sudan's neighboring countries and the broader Horn of Africa or Sahel regions? And do you believe this civil war could trigger a new conflict or further destabilize the wider region?
It is an important dimension of this conflict. It's happening within a region that is already very fragile. Sudan has 7 neighbors in the Greater Horn of Africa. All of them are fragile, facing their own pressures and issues with instability. 5 of the 7, in fact, are having their own internal conflicts. And so when you see the reverberations from the Sudan conflict spilling over into these neighbors, yes, it's compounding that instability and could greatly worsen the situations in those neighboring countries and lead to a compounding uh, layers of conflict in those countries. So, for example, despite the um, the 4 million new refugees created by the Sudan conflict within its neighbors, um, we're seeing that in some of these neighbors, you're actually having refugees from South Sudan, Ethiopia, Central African Republic, and Chad coming into Sudan because they're fleeing repression and instability in their own countries. So it's a region in turmoil, and this Sudan conflict, the longer it goes, is going to um, continue to drive instability beyond its borders.
Let's discuss something similar about the geopolitical stakes and external actors. We know that Sudan is strategically vital, and before the breakup of southern region, before South Sudan gained its independence, it used to be the biggest country in Africa, territory-wise at least. And what are the key national and geopolitical stakes in this war? Whether that's resources like gold, the strategic location on the Red Sea, Port Sudan, or Sudan's ultimate political alignment, and specifically, which foreign powers are involved? You have already mentioned some of them, and what are their specific interests?
Sudan's location is a big factor in why this has become a regionalized conflict. Again, you have the UAE and Russia supporting the Rapid Support Forces, which mostly controls the western part of the country. This is along the borders with Chad, Central African Republic, and South Sudan. And for the Sudan Armed Forces, they have been receiving support from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, primarily, and Russia also has provided political support for the army, and their interest vary, but it is for some of the natural resources. Sudan does have a number of gold reserves that both sides are exploiting. But Sudan has been the breadbasket for the Greater Horn of Africa and for parts of the Arab world for many years, being home to a large stretch of the Nile River. And what we are seeing from some of the Gulf actors is large investments in gaining control of agricultural land. The UAE in particular has a $10 billion investment to control 1.8 million acres of land, of agricultural land in Sudan. All of the regional actors are vying for control of trade routes. Several have efforts to control various ports. There's not just Port Sudan, but there are other smaller ports that they're investing in to try to build up and control trade in and out of Sudan, which, as you mentioned, is one of Africa's largest countries, territory, and also in terms of population, about 47 million people. And so the worry is that they're taking advantage of Sudan's fragility to try and create some sort of vassal state or mini state, if Sudan breaks up into smaller parts, that they will be able to control and reap the benefits of its economic riches from.
Yeah, so far we have discussed the geopolitical interests, the conflict sides, and the countries involved. And let's choose another topic, the humanitarian aspect of this conflict, which probably is the most important one. And does the current situation in Sudan constitute a humanitarian catastrophe in your mind? And looking at the road ahead, what is the most viable path to a resolution, and how realistic is that path given the current level of regional involvement and the fragmentation of the warring parties? And as we know, the Rapid Support Forces are being accused of conducting a genocide in Darfur region before. So, what are the chances of real resolution?
Well, absolutely, it is a humanitarian catastrophe. There are 14 million people who are displaced, either internally to Sudan or now as refugees in the bordering areas. Some 700,000 people are facing acute food insecurity, including famine. Most of that is in the western part of the country in the Darfur areas controlled by the RSF. About some half of the 47 million people in Sudan are considered to need some sort of humanitarian assistance right now. So the country's been devastated. It's considered the worst humanitarian disaster in the world by many observers, and it's entirely man-made. This is all as a result of this conflict, which, again, many observers felt is unnecessary. It could have been resolved through mediation and by just adhering to the agreed to democratic transition that was in place. And I think that picks us up to how do we get out of this? And I think while a lot of the attention is on the two military actors, we should remember that neither have very much popular support in the country. They are fighting a self-interested battle for control and domination. In fact, large majority of the Sudanese population wants to see a civilian government emerge in Sudan. That was what they wanted in 2019 when they protested against Omar al-Bashir. That's what they wanted during the transition. That's what they want now. And there is a robust civilian coalition of opposition groups and civil society organizations, professional associations, many of those who were part of the protest of 2019, that are calling for a restoration of civilian rule, and putting forward a way to rebuild a unified Sudan that represents citizen interest, that's representative of Sudan's diverse populations, and realigns the military to its legal role, its purposeful role of protecting citizens rather than ruling the country. And I think that option is actually the most viable if we're hoping to see a stable outcome, because it would signal to both the military actors that they're not going to be the head of state and that they should seek a compromise. And it would, I think, be the best outcome for the regional actors, because none of them are going to realize economic, political benefits in Sudan so long as it's in turmoil. And they're achieving stability, finding a neutral third-party civilian government that will be willing to work with all of the regional actors and respect contracts, uphold the rule of law, foster transparency. These are the things that are going to foster growth and reconstruction, rebuilding in Sudan. The regional actors will continue to be important partners in this process. They won't get shut out as they would if one or the other military actors were to prevail. So I think there is a solution. It would require active mediation and pressure on the regional actors so that they understand what's at stake and how their interests are served with this mediated settlement, and to realize that by supporting this mediation, they are not losing any advantages to their rivals in the process.
Dr. Siegle, your analysis has provided an essential clarity on the drivers, the actors, and even the possible solutions for this conflict. And we're deeply grateful for your time and expertise. Thank you once more to Dr. Siegle, representing the Spirit of Inquiry from the University of Maryland. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in this crucial discussion. If you found this insight valuable, please like this video, share it to help raise awareness, and subscribe to our channel for more expert analysis on global security and conflict. And thank you again, Dr. Siegle.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be with you.